When I was growing up, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I didn't realize it then, but that was the side hustle. And on the eve of me pitching to a group of investors, and the person said, "Yes, can you send me the invoice?" My company got valued at 3 million. And one of my shareholders said, "Well, like an incentive." Being a Singaporean, it was a shock. And I made the decision that I would not proceed. I proposed that we liquidate the company.
That is mind-blowing for me. You have the gut to blow the deal of listing the company for $300 million for this integrity matter.
Hello, and welcome to Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. This is season 5, and I thought I'll do something different to launch this season. And I invited a dear friend, Ruby Nguyen, to come and interview me. And so you're going to have the first episode, which is an interview that she did, and she's also a podcaster, where she interviews me about my own entrepreneurial journey, my thoughts about family businesses, as well as some other interesting things. So join me in the first episode of season 5.
Today, I'm thrilled to have with me a special guest, Dr. Ramesh Ramachandra. Dr. Ramesh is a serial entrepreneur who has built her tech company from scratch to pre-IPO in the early 2000s. Today, she's the founder and managing director of talent leadership Crucible Asia, consulting enterprises across Southeast Asia. She's also an angel investor behind the back of many new and rising entrepreneurs. And in Vietnam, she's come here very often, doing a lot of work here, consulting companies such as Thế giới di động. I'm sure you've known this company, and Mekong Capital, which is one of the rising biggest PE firms in Vietnam. So in today's episode, we'll be discussing two topics. Number one is we're going to dive a little bit into her journey as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And then later on, we're going to talk a lot more deeper about a topic that Dr. Ramesh is very passionate about. And myself, I'm deeply curious about too, which is family businesses. It's such a mystery to me. So today we're going to discover this mystery.
Ruby, I've been looking forward to this ever since we had a chat in Singapore about doing this podcast interview.
So let's get started with your past life.
Yes,
As
my
an,
past life.
I didn't mean to. It's a cute thing to say.
Yes.
So I've loved to learn about your entrepreneurial journey, building a company in tech in the early 2000s.
Yes.
As a woman entrepreneur, that's really incredible. I've heard you sharing this story with me on a coffee session, but I would love to learn more about it. So let's start with a brief history of your
Sure.
company from scratch to pre-IPO in 3 years.
When I was growing up, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur because I had a grand uncle who sort of inspired me because every time the family got together, people will gossip about him. He's doing this, he's doing that. And I thought, oh my God, he's got so much of attention. I must become a business person. I didn't get a lot of pocket money. So the easiest way to make extra money was to give tuition, organize tea dances. So I would do different projects to make money. And I didn't realize it then, but that was the side hustle, and you're making some money, right? In my 20s, I did my MBA, and then I spent the next 5 years unlearning whatever that I learned in MBA because it made me so risk averse. I was too scared to start anything, right? And eventually, I had the opportunity to start this company called Asia. And the business was about finding out who the consumers, what were they doing. So it was awareness, acceptance, and adoption on the internet. We did online surveys. So we get in touch with the ISPs or internet service providers, ask them to make the survey available to their database. And then we'll have like 60,000, 70,000 people responding from 15 countries, and then profile them and sell these reports. On the eve of me pitching to a group of investors, I had someone call me and say, "I heard you're doing your first report. When will it be ready?" And I thought it was my friend playing a fool. And I said, yeah, I'll be ready in 3 weeks. And the person said, how much will you sell it for? And I said, well, if you want the report, I can give you a brief one for 60,000 US dollars. And I was joking. I was joking. And this person said, yes. Can you send me the invoice and can we have it in 2 weeks? The great thing was I went into the pitch next day, not with just a $2 company, but with a $2 company which had a $60,000 order,
Oh my God.
and that changed my journey because my company got valued at $3 million straight away.
Wow. In the early 2000s, that was
Yes.
incredible.
Yes, my company got valued at 3 million and they wanted 10%, and so they paid 300,000 for it.
Wow, that is so cool. That's someone call you and just say that they want to buy it for $60,000 on the spot.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then that created a company that is worth $3 million the next day.
Correct.
Wow. And then after that, what happened?
It was a wild ride because when you start to take investors, then you need to also consider what's the exit because investors are coming on board to be able to exit. And we ended up raising a lot more money, several $1 million. And although we were profitable, we were doing one of those businesses on the peripheral of the internet, World Wide Web sort of space. We were making money, but we were not big. You had to be big and sexy in those days. And so we did a couple of mergers. And unfortunately, those mergers didn't work because you buy an asset called people, but people can leave after you merge with the company. So we ended up losing a lot of our money, the cash that we had in these mergers. And the dot-com crash happened from early 2000. And by 2001, although we had already done our listing prospectus and we were just about to list the company, we decided not to list it. At that time, I was really upset because it was my dream. I was in my mid-30s. In fact, a year before that, when we first started the process of talking to the bankers, they valued us at $1 billion.
Wow.
And by the time our prospectus was ready, we were looking at $300 million, but that was still significant,
Yes.
right? But I had a situation whereby I found that it was inconsistent with the personal values that I had. And I chose then that maybe it was better to close the company down rather than to continue with the listing. And that's what happened.
Wow. So you went from zero to hero and then go down to zero?
Exactly,
Oh
exactly,
my God.
exactly.
Oh wow, what a story.
Yes.
So the M&A you did was
Yes.
to get bigger and sexy.
Exactly.
And then it actually made your company lost a lot of money.
Yes, the problem is when you have a large team, you have high overheads. We had to rent out bigger facilities, and you don't just pay rent on a monthly basis, you have to commit for 3 years. There are breaking clauses for that. And when people start to leave, then you've got this empty workstation and it's not productive. But then your revenue has to also increase. So from being a profitable company, we're now making a loss, right? We're eating into our cash reserve. Eventually, when the IPO did not happen, I had a $1 million from the bank if I had signed off a personal guarantee. And I remember one of my board members, he refused to pass it. He said, no, you shouldn't sign that. I'm so grateful now, but I was so upset then. I thought he was preventing me from continuing the business. But what I realized is that we were on a track that nothing would have made a difference. So it was better that I did not become personally encumbered with a possible bankruptcy.
I see, I see. Wow. Um, what was the reason that the bankers, the investment bankers, right, valued you at $1 billion?
At the time when we went to look at the possible listing, we were profitable.
Oh,
That's
I
number
see. That
one.
was pre-M&A?
Small, tight team, making real significant profit. Uh, had the promise of scalability. Why? Because we took our market research. We were able to look at consumer trends. We were selling branding strategy to brands, and we created a campaign. And every month we would have like different sponsors who would come on board and pay fees to participate in that. So we're building a database. Unfortunately for us, we were just too early in the game. Today, it's all about community, it's all about stickiness, and we would have done well. But 22, 3, 4 years ago, it was just too early, right? So that was one of those things. And then we were also in the space where we were collecting real market research. And that data was valuable, and people do pay top dollar, as you can see from my $60,000 sale.
Even today, this
Yes.
market is huge. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there was also the traditional consulting that we did because of the data. So the data actually put us in a good place to be charging top dollar.
Wow, data is a gold mine, and that has been
Yes,
the same since then.
that's right. And now it's all about what do they call it? The big data analytics, right? Now, before it's much more restrictive, but we had large data sets because we were working with people online. And so we were actually at the cutting edge of collecting data and looking at how, trends were going to show up.
Wow. And then afterward, the dot-com crash happened and your company was lowered in the valuation to $300 million. And you said that because of something that didn't really align with your personal value, and you decide to not take the opportunity.
300 million Singapore dollars is still, yes,
Still a huge amount of money, and that's like the dream of every entrepreneur, right?
yes.
What made you decide to turn down that opportunity?
Well, during the 3-year journey, from starting the company to eventually deciding to liquidate it, I'd come to a point where I sort of regretted taking the money from investors. Everyone wanted to show that they were a great business when they could do fundraising. So I went along with that. But I really didn't need the money. But now I had to fulfill the expectations of investors who needed to exit. You're asking me about the exact case about what happened?
Yep, if you can tell.
Okay, usually when the prospectus is ready, you have to call down all your shareholders. And we had a number of shareholders because apart from having the institutional investors, we also had small shareholders. And I was just calling down the shareholders. And one of my shareholders said, "We're so excited you're going to list the company, but if you want us to sign off on the board resolution, we'll like an incentive."
Hmm. Is that a code word for under the table?
Yes, yes. And being a Singaporean, someone who grew up in Singapore and, always hearing that everything had to be above the table, right? It was a shock. And it had me stop for a while to reflect whether this is what I wanted to do. And at that time, I was in my mid 30s and also a woman, and I didn't have women in my board, which I regret now, as I really could not talk about this. And I made the decision that I would not proceed, especially since we were also not aligned as a board on how to sustain the company. Since I owned still the majority share in the company, I proposed that we liquidate the company.
Wow, that is mind-blowing for me that you
Yes.
have the gut to blow the deal of listing the company for $300 million for this integrity matter.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
respectable.
Oh, thank
And
you. It was really very scary because I got labeled a failure immediately, right? And no one likes to be labeled that way. And I couldn't talk about this. I'm talking about this now because it's already 20 years past. And today the environment is very different. People are willing to make those choices because it's important to live consistent with your values.
thank you so much for sharing this story. I mean, this is a story where it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to say and own all these mistakes that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So my kind of executive summary of this story is you started this company in data analysis in the early 2000s, get investor monies in a few
Yes.
rounds. Within the 3 years is IPO ready.
Yes.
But then along that journey, there's a few things happen. Number one is to get really big and sexy, ready for the IPO. You did a few M&As and it actually create the opposite effect sucking the cash out of the company and make it more what is this word?
Higher overheads and not sustainable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it burned a lot of cash, turned it from a profitable company to an unsustainable company.
Yes.
And then the dot-com crash, the valuation from 1 billion went down to $300 million. And then you was proposed to give bribery to some of the investor. You decided to not do that and was labeled as a failure at that point in time. But now you're okay to share this story as a success or not?
Yeah, it is a success because you're unclear about how life is going to show up. How are you going to live life, right? How are you going to put food on the table, right? You have all that uncertainty and you have to manage it. And you have to take risks now of trusting yourself that everything will be okay. And I'm glad I did that because I found the inner resilience, right? And the strength to be able to overcome that. And who I've become is a function of that success and the failure. Yeah.
What an inspiring story. Did you actually recover any money at all, or everyone was in a loss?
Well, we lost whatever money that was invested in the company. And there were also some creditors. So I had to literally go and meet every single creditor and negotiate with them to take a haircut or to settle it. And we also had some assets. So where it was possible, we gave away those assets. And one of the assets was actually the first incubator in Singapore, iExcel, which I co-founded with another company called startups.com. And so majority shareholder of JV Partnership took over the incubator and kept it going until just a few years ago, rebranded it now. So where it was possible, we let the assets go on. If I regret that I was not sophisticated enough to think about how to sell the company as a going concern to another group or to even maximize extracting value from it. At that time, I thought the only thing I can do was to go on or to close it down, right? The other options were not there.
I see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a series of success, also a series of mistakes and failures. Which do you think is the biggest mistake that you made in that journey?
The biggest mistake I made was I stopped trusting myself and my own judgment of some of the things that were being proposed to me. As an entrepreneur, we may do fundraising, but then we have a vision of our company, and the investors might want us to grow in a particular way. And in my case, we wanted to grow aggressively so that we could do the IPO. I had my doubts and my concerns, but I didn't share that sufficiently so that it was heard. Today, unfortunately, I find that with some of the companies that I've invested in, the founders are very excited and they want to grow very quickly. And I keep telling them, look, we didn't give you the money to grow so fast. You gave us this business plan, stick to that. Because the need to grow and scale sometimes can be unsustainable in the long run, both from an energy perspective for the founder and the team, as well as from being able to generate revenue. Because you can't keep fundraising all the time. You have to show some revenue buildup.
And profit.
Yeah, and profit as well eventually, right? So that's a dilemma for founders in today's environment. And I try to tell them, take it easy.
You know, you're telling the story as if it was a past, but I think the pattern of the story is still very relevant to founders today. Because I've talked to a lot of founders and I've been in startups and I'm also a founder, right? And
Yes.
we all trapped in this dilemma sometimes. Do I want to grow really fast, exit the company, or do I want to grow slowly or try to turn it into a more sustainable company? And the fundraising, getting people to invest in your company feels like a great validation. It's still very sexy, even though intellectually, right? We know the market has changed, but emotionally, a lot of founders still feel like it's something sexy to chase after.
Absolutely. One of the biggest shifts that we've started to see is all these uh, really high-end chefs who open very small restaurants, which can only seat like 10 or 12 people, and they'll serve you what they cook for the day.
Omakase.
Yeah. And that is really the key, right? Because if you are now an entrepreneur and you want to fulfill on your purpose and you're going to do just that and not be part of that sexy game, right? Maybe that's the alternative that's available.
Entrepreneurs have to really make that decision. It's a hard decision. It is
Yes.
so hard.
Yes.
Yeah. I talked to one of our mutual friends.
Yes.
He said
Yes.
that since he got out of chasing the glamorized image of success and fundraising, his life is so much more happy and productive. Family is so much more happy, and business is still growing well too.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, he's turned around the business as a result of having this context. Because it's interesting in my day job with Talent Leadership Crucible, we work with mindset change and corporate culture transformation. That's the key context that we need.
That was an amazing beginning of your entrepreneurial journey.
Yes.
And then you decided to switch to teaching and then consulting.
Yes.
And in your career, you have trained more than 2,000 entrepreneurs
Yes.
with the program by the Singapore government. What is the name?
Oh, it was called the SCT program. It was to encourage people to learn about entrepreneurship, and it was a 2-day program on how to start and run a business. It's really funny thing because this is about human beings. When you make a mistake, you decide that you don't want to make the same mistake. So the mistake I made with all my mergers, right, that I had this huge number of employees, and then they all left, and I had all these overheads. So I decided in my next business when I got this contract to train people in how to start and run a business that I was not going to hire anyone. They were all going to be like freelancers. Guess what? Well, I didn't protect the copyright,
Oh,
right? And then
no.
I created 20 competitors immediately.
Oh, I
Right?
see, I see. That's funny, like you said. You make this mistake and you swing to the opposite. But the
Exactly.
opposite is not good either,
Right.
right?
Right. And another thing that I did to swing to the opposite was that for 20 years, I decided that I was never going to start a company from a listing perspective, and I was never going to go back into tech. And then during COVID times, I saw the world was changing with all these new technologies, and I didn't want to be left out. And that's actually one of the reasons why I became an angel investor. I was a little bit too old to be a startup entrepreneur in that space, but for sure I could be an angel investor, and that's when I started to engage in that space again.
Now let's go into the topics that we decided to
Yes.
dive deeper, which is family businesses.
Now, this is the interesting thing, Ruby. When you search for a definition of a family business, there are almost 50 different definitions. And the simplest definition would be that there are two family members, they own 51% of the shares. But there are also other definition which talks about whether they are in management, whether they are in operations, and sometimes it can be as low as 15% of the shares. So the thing about family businesses is that globally, 80% of the businesses are family-owned businesses.
This is really mind-blowing for me. I would never thought that it would be that much. If you asked me to guess, I would be like maybe 10%. 80% is huge. It's
Yes.
basically almost every company is a family business.
Yeah. The logic is you're a founder, you start a business, and then your business is successful 30 years down the road. Your family members, sometimes they've been in the business with you working together, or your children have grown up and they now want to get into the business. And you think, oh, why don't I pass it on to them? And then it becomes a real family business from a founder led business to a family owned business, right? The second thing is that when you start businesses, and it was a case for me, it was easy for me to ask my sister to come and work for me. And I didn't have to pay her market rate. Sometimes I can be late in giving her salary. because family is willing to do that for you. So most businesses start with that kind of advantage with family.
Yes, yes. And so, in your definition, what is a family business?
I define a family business as one whereby there are two people from the same family and they own collectively at least 51% of the shares.
That makes sense. So that
Yes.
they hold the majority
Yeah.
of the company,
Mm.
and the decision making is basically the family being the holder of the decision.
So if you looked at the intersections of how it could happen, they are owners. Are they in management? Are they in operations? That could be subjective. But at least they have the shares,
Right.
51%.
Right.
But they may or may not be in management or operations.
And the 51% represent the majority, and that's the decision making power that they have.
Yes, at the board level.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's interesting because in Vietnam, I usually think about family business as if like most of the majority of the share and also most of the management are family members.
Wow.
That's how I think about it. And I talked to some other family business founders or CEO, and that's the sense I get. But I never actually sit down and do a study about how it's actually defined.
Right, right. Not all family businesses are small businesses where you only have two or three people. You've got family businesses which are huge, like the Samsung Group, like the Hyatt or the Hilton Group. It's just that they're professionalized now, and you don't see a lot of the family members in the operations and management of the company. But imagine, even if they were in the management and operations of the company, if you have 2,000 people, your family members are only 10.
Right.
The balance, 1,990 people, are non-family members. So it's very important to engage the non-family members because creativity and innovation will come from everybody. My doctorate thesis was just about this.
Oh.
Yes, I looked at how can family businesses tap on the creativity and innovation of non-family members. And the interesting thing that I discovered was that it was not about what the professional had to do, but it was about the family trusting the professional. Because when the family member trusts the professional, they will give them access to information, access to resources, and access to networks. And that allowed the professional to make decisions and to be successful. Because all you will do is call the son for approval, you will get the resources. Whereas in a corporate company, you have to go through the hierarchy. You have to submit your paper to this department, and this department goes to the next department, and it's quite rigid
I see.
and formalized.
I see. Also, in a way, family business is actually more flexible.
Yes, yes, and very quick in decision making. So that's why trust is a competitive advantage.
Right.
It allows them to pivot and make decisions quickly.
Right. Wow, that's very interesting. I've never thought about this topic. I would love to learn about what you think is a unique quality of family business beside the fact that you mentioned earlier.
Well, apart from trust, right? One aspect of a family business is altruism. And altruism is you're willing to give up your say in the matter or your privileges or your rights for the common good. That can be seen during hard times. If we need to reduce salaries, people are willing to do that, both family members and non family members.
Even non-family members.
Yes, yes, because that's the culture. But then during good times, if there is someone who is non performing, the family is willing to turn a blind eye and not say, like, oh, you're not performing, so you're fired. So it goes hand in hand with these two things, right? They cut slack on performance, but on the other hand, they enjoy the benefit of loyalty.
Wow, so it also feel like a real family, right? So
Correct.
in the hard time, you stick together and you sacrifice for the common family health.
Yes.
And then in a good time, maybe if someone doesn't perform, it's okay.
Yes.
Oh, that is so interesting. You've consulted with so many different family business in the region.
Yes.
Do you see any difference between Vietnam family businesses and other countries' family businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done extensive work with family businesses in Myanmar, Thailand, as well as in Vietnam. And by far, the Vietnamese family businesses are the ones who are really interested to maintain their kinship and connection with each other. That means I'm talking about that original family, because you can have family members who are like cousins and cousins' children. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, let's say, the founders and their direct descendants and the children who are working in the business. So, because they live together, the small family and the big family, it's important. They are having meals together, like lunch and breakfast. So, they can't bear it when they have a conflict. They want to sort the conflict out. Now, in contrast, in Singapore, we've had the privilege of having successful family businesses go through at least 3, 4 generations, which means that they're highly professionalized as well, because Singapore promoted for people to go abroad and study. The family's tightness broke down to a level whereby the small family lives on its own, doesn't necessarily all live together. And so, if someone in the family doesn't get along, there's no compulsion to get them to come back together. Why? Because the business is professionalized. I just come in to sign the checks, collect my paycheck and dividend, and it's okay if I can't get along with you. But that's not the case with the Vietnamese families.
But then in Singapore, it's much bigger family business, I guess.
Well, yes,
Many generations.
yeah, well, it's not necessarily just bigger, but they're also professionalized. So they don't depend so much on the family members to support, right? And at the same time, they live on their own. They don't have the big family, small family living together.
Right. So because of that, when there's family conflict, they actually let it.
They don't want to address it because it's a loss of face. They don't want others to know about it, so they're not going to talk about it. And because they don't talk about it, they'll never resolve it. But it's okay because I still get my dividend, my pay,
And the company will still
grow,
sustain. Interesting.
Yeah. You can see, right, from this is how people approach family businesses. The old way of thinking was that a family business was all about the business unit, because the business unit was there to fulfill the strategy, make the revenues, and create the profit. But today, from a systems perspective, you can consider that there's also two more subsystems. The other one is the family unit. That means that family which owns the company. So maybe there are 5 people or 7 people. And what is that family unit interested in? And so that family unit is interested in transgenerational legacy. And usually that means wealth accumulation and preservation, and like their good name. And then the third subsystem is the individual family members. So if you had 5 family members make the family unit, now each one of them has hopes and aspirations, and they want to fulfill those. If they are happy, successful, then the family unit is intact and happy, and the business can just continue. Otherwise, you're going to have conflict.
Wow, mind blowing. I'm learning like an MBA about family business here. And then what are the myths about family businesses that you see that people who don't understand about this subject?
Well, most people think that family businesses are small, and they think that family businesses are traditional, but that's not true.
I would love to touch a little bit more about family conflict that affect the business.
Yes.
So what are the characteristics of a happy family in the family business context?
Well, I think fundamental human things like connection, love, and respect for each other, and listening and being heard. These are the common characteristics, right, of a happy family. And when you don't have that and there's unhappiness, it can be different things. It can be resentment because the conflict has gone on for so long. And so it comes down to resentment and hatred. It can be competition because they've grown up in an environment where you have to prove you're better
Than your
right?
siblings.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. So all these things can be very counterproductive behavior. And it depends on the family culture. Actually, family have a culture, and we work on that culture. We don't only transform the business's culture, but also the family's culture.
And so how do family build culture?
Yeah. So family culture gets created because normally the founder, they're too busy with their business to pay much attention to the children and them growing up. And so what happens is that the children would grow up with their grandparents or with their nannies. And over time, they would experience unfairness or conflict. And these things just keep building up. And then one day, they finish their education and they're told, come to work. But they don't have the opportunity to clear the memory that they have of themselves and others of all these conflicts. So what happens, I show up at work and people will go like, yeah, but then she doesn't know how to count, or he is always like that. So this becomes a baggage that they bring to the workplace. And then the conflict goes on. And then they get married and their spouses join the business. It gets even more complicated, right?
So how do you solve the problem? Because it sounds like the whole family need to go to therapy.
Yes, it's something like that. So we usually start off with a foundational program, a 3-day program, where we give them the opportunity to see from a systems perspective how they're interrelated and interdependent, and that the success of the whole family depends on everybody, and that they have conflict. And then so we actually decode what is conflict. There is role conflict because I'm a brother and at the same time the manager. There is task conflict, which means that where do we want to go? Or there's process conflict, which is how do we go there? So we can say we go east, but then how do we go east? Do we take the plane or do we take the ship? And then there is relationship conflict. Relationship conflict is the hardest to solve because it's the years of conflict that has not been resolved. I now have a perspective about my family member and it's fixed. There's nothing that's going to change my view about that. And so to get rid of that view, it takes a lot of time and effort. One of the things that we do, and we found it to be really impactful, is that we create family futures. So we create like a future 30 years out. And when you look at the future 30 years out, where you have to confront, you're not going to be maybe 100% human being because you're partly machine. Then you wonder if this fight that I'm having with you, is it important?
I'm finding this so interesting because you're thinking about in 30 years we're gonna be half human, half machine.
Yes, I'm convinced, aren't you?
I am convinced too.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect the answer. Yeah, I thought you would say, oh, in 30 years now we're all old and and something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the point. The point is
Yeah.
when we look into the future, right? It's like the plane has got this runway. And the longer the future, all our current problem dissolves because it's not significant.
Right.
But we made it so significant. And so that's the power of a future. And the longer, the better. We usually do a 30-year future. And the moment we create the 30-year future, yes, the conflicts are there, but they can contextualize it. And they work on new habits that they want to have where they can create trust and they can create opportunity to communicate. And finally, it's all about accountability. So everyone wants to be treated fairly in a family business. They want to be consulted, they want to be informed, they want to make the decision, but everybody is not playing the same role. And so understanding that, so it's almost like you go for an MBA in family business to understand what it takes to be a family member, as a working family member in a family business.
Wow.
And when they have that awareness, they can reconcile. Okay, maybe I don't need to be consulted or I don't have to have a say in the decision because I'm actually not active in the business. I'm pursuing my passion, which is to do painting. So that's the basis of negotiating and navigating the family dynamics.
Wow. And do you think there's any principle from family businesses that non-family companies can actually learn and apply to improve their business?
I think one of them is definitely altruism, where we are able to set aside our own individual needs for the collective. And I think that's the most powerful thing that family businesses bring. And number two, trust, the ability to trust, and through that, create competitive advantage.
And how do you think that companies can build that? Because I feel like maybe the trust matter is a core principle, whether it's family or non-family business. But the altruism, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's easy to say on theory, but it's not easy in practice
Yeah.
to say that a company can have people who are willing to sacrifice their personal
Yes.
interests.
That's a really profound question that you've asked. And that's the core of our work. To get people to be able to move from being an individual to a collective, it can be done. And we do that in our 3-day program. And we do that by creating awareness for them that they are part of a system, and that the system, the whole, has to work. And we do that to also demonstrate for them and give them the tools to be able to do that in a moment with awareness. So when they realize they're operating at a silo level, like they are separate, they can then choose and switch to the collective mode. So, facilitated, it's about equipping people with the skills to catch themselves, and two is to speak in a way that creates that new collective partnership versus the one-to-one individualistic part.
I see. How about from a founder or a CEO point of view? How do you create that culture for the people in your team?
Right. We work with founders, not the HR people, because they come to us with a problem, and their problem is usually, I want to grow the business, or my business is declining, and if we don't do something about it, we'll have to shut down. HR person is going to come to us about learning and development and training goals. Whereas the founders, they ask from a business perspective, and they understand that at the end of the day, because the business is there to leverage on the team's effort, the team has to be aligned and the team has to go in one direction. And if people are not aligned and moving in that one direction, you're going to have things falling out, not timely, and not accurately done. And that's a company which is failing. So founders are interested in doing that. The question is, should a startup founder do it? I think absolutely, because the earlier you build a culture, the culture allows the newcomers to fall into place. But then it's a big investment, right? Do you spend the time building your culture, or do you spend it with coming up with your product market fit, right?
And there's only 24 hours a day.
Exactly. And there's only X dollars that you can spend.
Yeah.
So that's the dilemma that founders have. But you can do it in different ways by being a founder who is self aware. So ultimately, right, the awareness of company depends very much on the self awareness of the people.
Exactly.
And the founder can actually shape that by being self aware themselves.
So there's a conventional wisdom that people say, hey, don't treat your company as your family or vice versa. But now that I hear about this new perspective from you about family business, I feel like there's so many great things about building family-like culture in a company. And so how do you reconcile these two things?
Well, I personally think that families nurture and nourish us. Yes, there are dysfunctional families, yeah. But we can take the goodness of what a family provides, and especially the altruism part of it. And we have to be also mindful that we don't create situations of favoritism, which is actually one of the biggest complaint about family businesses, that one person is favored over the other. And more importantly, family members are favored over the non-family member professionals, right? So every human being wants to be heard, wants to be seen. And if you can create an equitable environment where you can allow everyone to flourish, then you are really creating a culture for altruism. For altruism to work, when we do our 3-day process, people connect to their own personal purpose, like your North Star. Because only when you understand what's your personal purpose, you can commit to the company's purpose, which is the vision.
And where do you think this advice of like do not treat your company like business or do not treat your people like members of the family comes from?
Well, it comes from the normal kind of behavior that's there in some family situation, which is we can take it for granted, right? We don't say thank you, we don't appreciate because we are so focused on getting something done. And does it happen? Yes, of course it
Yeah, it
happens.
happens. People when they
Yeah.
come and they give their hearts, treat this as a company, and then they got retrenched or they got fired. You know, like
Yeah. Yes.
that hurts them.
Yeah. And so, but that one perspective. And there's another perspective where, as a family, we can go together and we have connection and we have kinship. So, both are there. So, it takes the leader, META, systems leader, to manage the duality.
Yes. And like you've been saying the whole conversation about family businesses, they have good characteristic, and then there are bad characteristics about
Yes.
family. There's dysfunctional issues,
Yes.
which has to be managed. But when you can manage those things, it's a beautiful connection between people.
Yes.
And there's a shared love for the mission of the company, and I can feel it's so beautiful. And
Yeah.
even if like my current business is not a family business and I don't want to turn it into family, but I can still take some of those principles to apply into my own company.
Correct. How to operate as a collective,
Right.
right? How do you come together, all these different people as a collective?
Right.
You share a common vision.
Right. Yes. So whether it's family or non-family, the principle here is that people who care about each other, who are willing to work out some of the issues when it happen, uh, move toward a common goal, and then the personal values also align with that common goal.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the spirit of it, whether you call it family or non-family business,
Exactly.
right?
We create the shared vision
Right.
that they can all align together and work towards that.
Yeah. Last year, I was hosting a learning session with YPO, the Young President Organization,
Yes.
about family business. They talk about succession and next gen, and I would love to learn more from you of the challenges that you predict the next gen of family business will face in this really fast-moving business environment.
Well, the biggest issue for founders and the next gen is really communication. And in some ways, the older generation knows where to go, but they don't know how to communicate that to the next generation. The next generation wants to contribute, and so they want to know how are we going there? And because the older generation is not communicating back as to where we are going, so they can't contribute how to go. So there is an impasse. And often it takes for both parties to be able to look at what are their current perspectives that holds them back. Usually they already have a view. Oh, the founders are so traditional. They don't have a system. They are so frugal. They're so old fashioned. And for the founders, it is like, oh my God, I can't trust them. What will they do to our legacy? Right? What will they do to our staff? Will they fire them? So there is this misunderstanding. And that's one of the biggest challenge that keeps both the founders and the next gen separate. Now there's also the other change that has happened. The new generation has access to information through internet, the education that they have received abroad and locally with many networks. So they have many ideas and they want to be engaged in the world, in something which fulfills their purpose. Their difficulty because they sometimes think that what the family business is doing or is providing is not a match for their purpose. But it's only because they are looking at it from the superficial aspect of what is purpose or passion. And it's not going deeper down to seeing that, oh, my family business hires 2,000 people. That means 2,000 families. And that we've been doing this for 30 years. So we've been contributing to so many livelihoods. When they start to connect it back to see the contribution of their legacy, they'll see that they want the same things that their grandfathers or grandmothers did in their time, but it's just that it's being expressed differently.
But then how do you solve it if you are the founder of the family business and now the young generation, they want to pursue a totally different path, right? With or without the legacy, but it's a whole different path, right? From your vision, how do you solve that misalignment?
Yeah. So there are two schools of thought, right? One school of thought is take your next generation, give them a sum of money, and tell them go and expand this business because you have a pie and you need to expand the pie as the family expands so you have the wealth to share, right? So that's logical, right? Then there's another school of thought, and that is that, hey, look, this is what we've been doing for years, and we want to preserve this business. But you have to come in and you have to do it our way. That's how it starts off. And yes, there is a big challenge for the next gen when they come into a system which has already been professionalized by the founders, people who are working on the founder's order. And even if the founder doesn't come to work, a phone call will be made to the founders to complain or to pass the message. And so when the next gen goes home for dinner, they'll go like, what happened today at the meeting, right? So the only way to interrupt this is that when the next gen takes over, you have to create a visioning exercise with the current team of senior management people. Then they co-create the future and they become partners. Of course, it's not going to change overnight, but at least it gives the next gen an opportunity to create partnership with the senior managers to fulfill on what they collectively now say is what they want.
Hmm. So the involvement in that process of creating the vision together is the key to aligning everyone to the vision and involving the next gen into the family business in a more harmonious way.
Yes, that's right. Otherwise, the next gen has no access to work with the existing team of staff.
I heard someone talking about also a big family business in Vietnam, giving his next gen kind of like a sandbox for them to do whatever they want, as long as it's a part of the family business, but it doesn't have to be a core family business. What do you think about that?
Why not? If you have the ability to do that and to mentor them, I think it's important to give them the resources to be successful. Because whoever the next gen is, when they are not successful, it has a big impact on the big family. And so look at what their own hopes and aspirations are. If it is not in the area of business and they want to do something outside of that, then empower that too.
So there's so many different ways to do succession and next gen planning. It's not one way or another. It really
Yes.
depends on the family and the individuals in that family and the culture of that family.
That's right. But I think the most fundamental thing for family businesses who want to uh, pass on their business to the next gen is that they have to actually train and develop the next gen to be entrepreneurial as early as possible. Yeah, because if the next gen is not entrepreneurial, as in a mindset perspective, they'll find it really difficult to grow the business and to look at the opportunities moving forward because they've not had the opportunity to confront that. And that's a very important piece. And often the next gen gone overseas and have grown up thinking they're just helping their parents out. They didn't realize that they are going to be the successors.
Actually, that happens in a lot of Vietnamese family businesses. They send their children to overseas and then they realize, oh, my children has become a different person. And when they come back here, it's not easy to align the values and
Yes.
the vision of the children with the original family members.
Absolutely. And to the point that I made earlier, that founders are so busy building their businesses, so they don't pay attention to that. And then it's too late. And if you don't have the time to do that, then find the right mentors to create that pathway for your children to be exposed to these ideas early in life.
Circling back to your story, you
Yes.
saw your uncles
Yeah.
doing his business. I'm just going to share a little personal story here.
Yes.
Sometimes I thought about why I have this urge to be an entrepreneur, and I realized it also happened in my family.
Oh,
Yeah. So
tell
when
me
I was
more.
5 to 7, I used to live with my grandmother, and she had this bar and pa kind of shop in a local market.
Yes.
And I used to follow her just to play, right? I never thought about it as training for
Right.
entrepreneurship. I follow her and I just observe her buying things and selling things at higher price, negotiating different goods and making kind of negotiation and deals in a
Yes.
very small way. And then she started to teach me how to do that. And that was my first entrepreneurial training.
Wow.
And that's how later on I started my own kind of side project in school like you, that you
Yes.
did, selling things similar to what she did.
Yeah.
And that was my training for entrepreneurship. And that's, in a way, it's kind of family legacy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've never thought about it that way, but now that you talk about it,
Oh, amazing. That's really
yeah,
great.
it feels like it's also somewhat a family kind of training
Yes.
to be entrepreneurs. All the hustles that you mentioned, right? And all the
Yes.
fundamental skill, like buying the cost of goods sold at a lower price, repackage it and sell it at a different
Yes.
price, create new value,
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
that's right.
innovate the
Yes.
product. Yeah. We'll move on to the last session of episode today,
Yes.
which is the lightning questions. I love this round because I can get to ask as many questions as I want and very quick answers.
Okay.
And so I've stalked your LinkedIn and
Ah.
on your profile that you put a question. Do you think entrepreneurs are born or made?
Oh, okay.
So please tell us.
I think it's both. In the past, it was more like born, but today it can be made because you've got technological access to getting into entrepreneurship.
Which one is more?
I think inherently it is born, right? Because the passion, the commitment, the ideas are generated from there. And like you just shared, I'm sure your grandmother has other grandchildren, but somehow you picked it up, not your sister, not your brother.
Do you think young people should start their business as soon as possible, maybe in school or fresh out of school?
We need to encourage young people to be open, to take risks, to fail fast, and to keep trying. Be innovative. They need to see that creativity and innovation all comes back to how do you create that value so that it becomes entrepreneurship. In today's world of disruption, entrepreneurship is about how to be resourceful in life. And the sooner that we can teach them that as it is important and it is necessary, in other words, that if you come across a problem, you are able to define what the problem is. And if you define it well, you've half solved it. And then your parents don't have to worry about you.
Right, right. So that's your definition of entrepreneurship. It's a way of living,
Yes.
being very resourceful.
Yes. And number two is being able to manage uncertainty and take risks as needed because you can't live in a cocoon and say, I'm not going to do that. And number three is you create value, and your value is financial and non financial. And it's not just for yourself, but it's also for others. So, an entrepreneurial mindset is being resourceful, managing risks, and creating value.
I love entrepreneurship, by the way. I love it so much that I create this podcast
Yes.
just to share more stories, learn from entrepreneurs. Like you said, entrepreneurship is a way of life.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a way to fulfill potentials in life for yourself and for other people.
That's true.
What is a definition of success as an entrepreneur?
Oh, maybe when I first started and I brought on my investors, at that time it was having funding from investors, doing an IPO. And then as I went on that entrepreneurial journey, measure of success was fulfillment and the ability to make impact. Yes, financial independence is important because if you're worrying about rent to pay and the food to have, then it's difficult. But when that is sorted out, then you can look at other things about how you can contribute to people and also be part of the collective. And I think that's what entrepreneurship provides you. And for me,
So the earlier success definition was about money, getting recognized, IPO.
yes.
Then later on is about fulfillment. Fulfillment, is that the right word?
Yeah, fulfillment, and contribution.
And contribution.
Yeah,
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing about that.
you're welcome.
Just one curious question, like a counterintuitive principle in building companies.
Well, number one important thing for a founder is to hire people who are smarter than you. I've always been in industries where I've not known everything about it. I'm just someone who knows how to bring everything together. Smartest person on my team would be doing other things, but I'm the one who goes and closes the sale, looks after the admin, looks at, okay, where do we need to expand? My skill is to look at, okay, where is the next growth and how do we get there and get the resources?
I see. Yeah, hiring smarter people than you is a great principle. I wonder why it's still difficult or is considered counterintuitive for people though.
Because unfortunately, people don't know how to collaborate. They're not taught to collaborate in schools because you're rewarded for being top of the class. It's not about collective. So we have all these untrained people who are smart who now have to be trained to contribute to a collective. And that's why building culture is actually a good idea if we have the means and resources, because most people come to us direct from school are not trained to work together.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel this pain a lot.
Yes.
I hire a lot of young, smart people,
Yes.
but yeah, the weakness is that they don't know how to work together.
That's right. And I was working on a project for the last 6 months in Hanoi with a group of very young, talented people. At some point, they were making mistakes, and I'm like, "Did you go and talk to your manager?" And like, obviously not. And I said, when you go out to work, that's what companies will expect you to do.
It's very different than in school because in school, when you make mistake, right, you're punished for making
Yes.
mistakes. You're afraid to talk to your teachers.
Exactly.
But in the workplace, that's that's a rookie mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, since I saw your book
Yes.
writing about the big jump into entrepreneurship 2.0,
Yes.
I haven't read it, so I would
Yes.
love to learn what you define as entrepreneurship 2.0.
Well, I wrote this book first in 2003 after training 2,000 people in entrepreneurship. I didn't want to continue training, as I said, you can read the book. So the book has been written in a way that it allows you to look at what are your barriers to becoming an entrepreneur. And then ultimately saying that even if you don't become an entrepreneur, as in start and run your own business, what you can do is take that mindset and apply it in other areas of your life. During COVID, I was thinking, okay, what book do I want to write? And I looked at entrepreneurship and I was surprised that not much has changed in entrepreneurship, right? But some has changed, and it's easier for people to become entrepreneurs today because of technological innovation, and that people are more ready to fail and to embrace this lifestyle. In fact, it's actually quite sexy to be following your purpose or your passion. But on the other hand, I think there are also some interesting things that have creeped into the system. And one is people who are doing it as a side hustle, which I think leads to burnout. And then there are also people who are driven because of those measures of success being associated with how you perform as an entrepreneur. I wanted to create for people that entrepreneurship fundamentally is really freedom to create the life that you want. And then we burden ourselves with all these things to measure ourselves. And maybe that's something that we don't need to do. But it's a journey, and we'll all come to that conclusion over time.
I think most first-time entrepreneurs will make the mistake of falling into the traps we mentioned, but eventually they will get the slap in the face
Yes.
by life, by the failure of the company, by something, and then they realize that there's a much deeper layer to entrepreneurship, like you mentioned, such as living. It's a vehicle to living the most fulfilling life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in one sentence, what do you define as entrepreneurship?
Oh, entrepreneurship is to be future ready.
To be future ready.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to be future ready?
Future is about disruption. And can you predict what's going to happen? No. So essentially, you've got to be resilient. And it's a mindset. Entrepreneurship is really a mindset that allows you to be creative, innovative, resilient in the face of disruption. So you're future ready.
Right? Yes. What would be your advice for women entrepreneurs?
I encourage women to actually explore entrepreneurship. And in most societies, entrepreneurship is one way of taking care of the family. The unfortunate thing about women entrepreneurs is that they don't monetize their time in the business. So they may not build the business, package it, brand it. They're scared to be getting all that attention and they self sabotage. Our nature of wanting to take care of the collective. And so we'll always trade off having the most successful or the biggest or the largest business, whatever, because we also need to take care of all these other concerns.
Yes.
And that will be a challenge until men and women can play an equal role in the different areas of our lives.
And for the last question of today, it will be a silly question. If you can display your message on all billboards on Earth with a message for all entrepreneurs, what would be that one message that you would like to put on?
Just do it.
Just do it?
Yeah.
From Nike?
Yeah.
Is it from Nike? Or
Yes, yes,
okay.
totally.
Just do it. Okay, I think that's the best message ever, and I agree. That's what I remind myself every day as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramesh, for your time
you're
and for your
welcome.
sharing of wisdom today.
Thank you, Ruby. I've enjoyed our conversation.